Yo, welcome back everybody. I hope you guys are doing well as always. So a couple days ago, I was watching some YouTube and I got recommended one of Dom Corleo's old music videos for Converse and Fly as Hell. And I just remember I used to listen to those two songs all the time. That was like kind of when Dom Corleo was starting to like blow up a little bit. And I just remember those two beats being like crazy at the time. And after hearing those beats for the first time in a while, it inspired me to make something similar to those two songs. If you guys are familiar with those songs, you'll know that they're just like super kind of atmospheric. They got a lot of texture and kind of like granular stuff going on with them. And that was really what inspired me to make the beat I'm going to show you guys today. So I ended up doing some quick drums on this one just for the video's sake, but I kind of want to see how you guys can flip this sample. So I'm going to leave it in the description as like a Dropbox link, and I want you guys to flip it, make a beat with it, and post it on either Instagram or like send it to me on Discord or whatever. I just want to hear what you guys can make with it. And I think I'm going to pick the best person's beat and give them the new infrared serum bank that me and Noah just dropped. So if you've been eyeing that kit, this is a really good way to maybe get it for free. But yeah, with all that being said, this is how I would make melodic beats for Dom Corleo. So like I said, I want to primarily kind of focus on this melody just because I used an interesting technique for this one that I'm kind of excited to show you guys. I've never really done this technique before. Crazy preset. Like I can't believe I made this in Serum, I'm not gonna lie. And it actually involves the new Serum bank, so you'll get to see it in action. But yeah, starting off with the sample, we're at 133 BPM. And this first sound we got is from an Arturia plugin, the Farfisa 5. I've never used this plugin. I don't know what compelled me to use this when I opened FL, but I just saw the name and clicked it, and it actually is pretty fire. So I used the home organ preset. So this was the melody that I ended up drawing in. I believe we are in the key of B minor. And this is a little side note, but I was actually watching a recent Max Shooter video where he was talking about like vintage samples and stuff. And he explained that it's fun to kind of mess around with where your bass lines start. You know, don't just always, like say for example, because you're in the scale of B minor, don't always just start it on B. Mess around with like different bass lines by using different notes in the scale. It can really create some cool stuff, and it actually worked here. I applied that and I think it turned out pretty cool. So this was the first melody with that Arturia preset. Yeah, just a really good kind of clean bass sound to start off the sample. Breaking it down a little bit, I don't know really anything about music theory, so I'm not even going to try to tell you why these chords sound good or whatnot. But basically we just have this set of chords here, and then we have these little kind of mid-accent notes, and then we have basically this pattern that is just repeating across the entirety of the 8 bars. So then usually my next step with samples is just adding a bass line so I can kind of get a feel for how it's going to sound. For this bass, we use the locked bass from the infrared serum bank, and I just ended up following the root notes of that original MIDI. Again, just a really clean preset. Now this is where I started to experiment with some different techniques. Like I mentioned in the beginning, those two songs by Dom, the Fly as Hell and Converse, they have a lot of like kind of random little like artifacts that go on throughout the beat. It's really like texture heavy. And so I wanted to try to achieve that with this ARP. So I used the ARP trim preset from the infrared serum bank. And on it, before I play this, we have a EQ that just kind of like really shapes the sound. And then we have a halftime, which basically like it says half times the melody. And then what really is like the signature Dom kind of sound is the really like stuttering types of melodies. That's kind of like what he blew up off of. So I used this Fill Stutter Grove preset in Shaperbox 3. And with all that together and the ARP sound, we ended up with this. So for this next sound, I wanted to build again on that sort of like atmospheric texture kind of sound. So we got this Playbox VST in Contact. And if you guys don't know what this is, it's basically like a big sample library, and you can kind of randomize your preset pretty much. So if you just keep kind of hitting this randomize button over here, it'll just mash together like different samples, and then you can play them in a set key that you pick. This plugin is really like a go-to if I ever want to do like textural kind of granular stuff. The sample library that it has is just like crazy in my opinion, and it works perfectly for that granular type of stuff. So with that preset, I just drew in these notes, and basically each one of these notes just kind of plays like a different set of samples. All right, then we got another sound from Serum, again from the infrared bank, and this is the pad getaway preset. So based on what you can see I drew here for the melody, the pad almost acted more of like a pluck in this case. And on this one, I have an EFX fragments with this 1-bar glimmer preset on it. And with that EFX preset, I automated it just to kind of turn on and off. You can see here, these were the curves that I drew in, just because if you leave it on the whole time, it can get a little overwhelming. So I really just wanted it to kind of like sparkle here and there. So yeah, you can see that EFX fragments just kind of gives it a little bit extra texture. You're probably noticing a pretty common theme throughout all of these samples, and it's texture. I can't express enough how important it's like just adding as much texture and atmosphere to these beats. It can like change the entire feeling of the whole melody. So this next sound is what I was talking about earlier with the experimentation side of things. I don't normally do this. I've never really done this method for a Serum preset, but I have this texture called Wolves that's in the infrared bank, and the preset stock has this sort of like granular loop that plays, and then it also has a like a vocal sample, and I ended up turning the vocal sample off. And what is really cool about this preset is that it has these macros down here that can kind of like scan through the different pieces of this loop that's playing. So it's like basically a manual kind of granulizer, if that makes sense. You'll hear it as I play the notes, but basically what I did is I just had a B note because it plays in a minor scale. So I just set it to the root of the scale that we're in. So I put these notes on B, and basically as the melody played, I recorded the movement while messing with this granular knob, and it really just gave me like a really cool effect. So without messing with that knob, the original like stock preset just sounds like this. So you can hear it's just kind of like a one-dimensional tone. But what I ended up doing was, like I said, I messed with the kind of shifting of the like scanner inside Serum, and I ended up with a pretty cool texture that sounds like this. Just a really cool, like kind of unique chop that you can get. And what's cool is you can get different chops every single time, so they'll never really sound the same unless you do the exact same movement inside of Serum. To give you guys kind of like a live demonstration, so if I just keep this on this B note throughout the whole thing, and then we open up this Serum and I'll hit play, and I'll scan through this granular macro here, and you guys can hear it kind of like just like warp and shift between different parts of this loop. Crazy preset. Like I can't believe I made this in Serum. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna gas myself up, but this is just like crazy in my opinion. Can be used for so much stuff. And I'm really thinking about making like an entire bank of these kinds of presets. They're almost like granular phrases that you can use inside Serum and just like manipulate however you want. Let me know if you guys would want that as like a full bank, like 50 presets or something like that. I think it'd be really, really cool. All right, so with that being pretty much the entire melody, this is what everything sounds like together. Crazy textures and just kind of like, I don't know, I think this is a really cool method for making this kind of loop, and I'm definitely excited to try this out for future loops. Like I said, I just did some really quick drums on it, so I'll show you guys that right now, but I'm really interested to see like how you guys could potentially flip this. So we'll just go through these drums pretty quick. We got a standard clap. Then I added in a hi-hat. And then we got a kind of like accent snare and then an open hat. This is the snare. And you just heard that open hat, but I'll play the full pattern. And then we also just added this like chime crash sound effect. And then we have the 808. It's just like a kind of more like a sub bass. And I just followed the root notes of the original MIDI. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing I did was I pitched the loop up 2 semitones after I exported everything. Just gave it a little bit more of like a kind of higher end, sort of more energetic almost, if that makes sense, less kind of dark sounding. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this whole beat. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Let me know if you guys are Dom CORLEO fans. I used to be a fan of his music. I haven't really kept up with a lot of his like recent stuff. But yeah, after going back and listening to those old songs, I might do some like catch up on his discography and just kind of see what he's been up to. But I definitely am just a fan of the kind of like old Dom CORLEO sound in general. Yeah, as always, I hope you guys learned some. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Go check out this infrared serum bank if you're interested. I am biased, but I think it's one of my best serum banks that I've worked on in a while. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.